Blog Talk Radio.
Bigfoots Pad Paranormal Investigations team is in charge of the field. Bigfoots Pad Paranormal Investigations team. Bigfoots Pad Paranormal Investigations team.
And welcome to another edition of the Bigfoots Pad Paranormal Radio. On the lines with me today, I have the Mothman Warrior 1.0, and I have Tim, also known as the King Ray. Well, today's show, we're going to talk about the Kasai Rex. And for those of you who don't know what the Kasai Rex is, we'll get into that in a minute. And our other caller just called in, the fabulous and amazing Archangel, also known as the Donald McDonald. Brent gets his full name used on this show.
Sadly.
From Palmdale, California, must I add.
So great. Some people are going to be knocking on my door now.
Hey, Donald.
Well, so Nick, I was going to say, before we get started with the show, would you like to say a little bit of team news before I get started with the international news?
Yeah, sure. Well, again, we are trying to work on the UFO crash in northern Nevada's documentary. We just have to try to find a way to orchestrate. Let's find a way to orchestrate things because all of our schedules and whatnot conflict at times, and it's hard to try to synchronize things. But we are trying to work on a documentary for a case that Jeremy, or King Sasquatch, has been working on very hard for many years, and we would like to see the fruits of his labor to come forth. So I think, that this is going to be something pretty big. I don't want to go out on a big limb and say that it's on the same caliber as Roswell, but if we really do find something big here, and there could definitely be something big from what I've heard talking to King Sasquatch myself. I live with him, so talking to him about the case, I've learned some things that are simply amazing, that will blow everyone's minds away. The things that I've experienced just working on the case myself here and there has really startled me and shaken me a little bit at times, so definitely everybody should look forward to the coming out of this documentary at a not yet determined date.
Yeah. Well, a further note on that, we're also filming a Bigfoot documentary that's based out of the mountains nearby from Las Vegas, which is something you don't really hear about. We started filming that too. But, okay, well, I'll get started with a little bit of international news. Russian scientists claim that this lake is home to Siberian Loch Ness Monster. Russian academics are calling for a scientific probe into claims of the Siberian Loch Ness Monster in one of the world's most remote lakes. Researchers using underwater scanners have found evidence of Nesky measuring up to 33 feet in length in the deep waters of Lake Labinkur, is how I think he said that, or Labinkur. Intriguingly, the evidence is at the lake where native Evenk and Yakut people have long claimed an underwater creature lurks. The evidence includes a picture which it is claimed shows the monster, says the Siberian Times. Known as the Devil, testimony dates back to the 19th century that says that the monster has enormous jaws. It was our fourth and fifth day at the lake when our echo-sounding device registered a huge object under the boat, says Dr. Emilia Yanova. Yes, I'll have to say that. Emilianova. I guess I was right the first time. It was clearly alive and too large to be one of the dozen or so known fish species in the lake. The object was very, very dead and of homogeneous structure. Surely not a fish or a shoal of fish. It was above the bottom of the lake, she says. So what do you think about that, Brent?
I think it's definitely possible that there could be something out there. I mean, if it's that secluded and it's, you know, up in the middle of nowhere, right?
Yeah, it's one of the most remote lakes in the world in Russia.
Yeah, I could definitely see something living out there, thriving in the cold waters out there.
You agree, Nick?
Yeah, I think it could be an unknown animal to science. Maybe not necessarily a Nessie or a similar species, but the remote location of the lake provides a very good habitat for an animal to evolve without any large disturbances from mankind or other environmental factors that could come into play.
Well, my next article is about Easter Island. It says the idea that extraterrestrials visited ancient civilizations has been around for decades. A theory most prominently promoted by Enric von Daniken in his best-selling book, Chariots of the Gods. In fact, the stone was taken from an extinct volcano called Rano Raripu, saying about the stones that make the heads, on the northeastern part of the island and were transported using ropes and logs to various sites along the coast. There's no mystery where the Maui, or the head, in other words, came from. In fact, hundreds of them can still be found embedded in the partially carved out Rano Raripu volcano. So, if there's no mystery who carved these huge heads, then the only question left is why. Why were these things carved? Researchers believe that each head represented a deceased head of a family or clan, but they can't be exact. It says the inhabitants of Easter Island gradually diminished due to internal warfare, slavery, and disease. But the question of why these heads were built remains a mystery. And some people think that they were due to extraterrestrials is why they were built, or made, however you want to say that. Carved. What do you think, Tim?
Well, I also heard that they believe the Maoris were also like they're gods of some sort, is what I also heard before.
Yeah, well, I was gonna say that makes sense because they don't really know why, but they could be extraterrestrials. They were saying.
Yeah.
You agree, Brent?
Yeah, I agree.
Agreed.
What's that? Oh. Well, scientists have discovered a well-preserved frozen woolly mammoth fragments deep in Siberia that may contain living cells, edging a tad closer to the real Jurassic Park possibility of cloning a prehistoric animal. Russia's Northeastern Federal University said that an international team of researchers had discovered mammoth hair, soft tissues, and bone marrow 328 feet underground during a summer expedition in the northeastern province of Yakutia. Expedition chief said Korean scientists with a team had set a goal of finding living cells in the hope of cloning a mammoth. scientists have previously found bones and fragments, but not living cells like this. And Grigorev, is how I think you say the guy's name, told the newspaper Zizglevad that it would take months of research to determine whether they indeed have found living cells. So I guess that they said by the beginning and the end of the year they might know at the earliest if they could clone this mammoth.
That's pretty interesting.
You think so, Brent? Interesting?
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. I mean, by the end of the year, I mean, not if the apocalypse happens, I mean, might not have time.
Well, I know you had an interesting theory before on why they shouldn't clone ancient dinosaurs and animals you were saying on a past show.
Yeah, it's kind of like Jurassic Park theory is the way I like to explain it. I mean, something that's, you know, millions of years ago that it's in the past. I mean, it was naturally selected to end its life. I mean, its species is totally obliterated by the Ice Age and everything. So I mean, it's just to be like the way they explain it in Jurassic Park, just to be thrown back into the mix with the regular world. It's not gonna know what's going on, what century it's in. And it's gonna be really confused, and it could, you know, act out violently towards humans.
So, well, no doubt, it would ruin the ecosystem if you put it out there to run wild. It would have to be in a zoo or something.
Yeah, it would have to be somewhere where it can't try to, I guess, propagate with if it could, with other, you know, elephant species and stuff like that.
Do you have anything to add, Nick?
I agree 100% with Brent, whether it was nature or God or whatever, that it wiped the dinosaurs out. Not the dinosaurs, the dinosaurs and the mammoth afterwards. These creatures aren't meant to exist in a modern-day ecosystem. It would throw the balance of the environment off, I believe, because I read, you know, in places that say if you go to a particular environment and you kill a species of mosquito, actually this is something that they've talked about, when you have these West Nile virus scares in the United States, there are often talks of just going in and completely obliterating the mosquito population in order to get rid of the West Nile virus. But then scientists come forward and say, well, you can't get rid of the mosquitoes, because if you get rid of the mosquitoes, you're going to kill off the birds, some of the fish, and these animals, and when those die off, it's going to have a domino effect, and the environment's going to be thrown off the hilt. So to add an animal like a woolly mammoth into a modern-day environment, to me, would be a very foolish decision.
But it would be interesting, though, to look at for a while, though, you got to admit.
Oh, yeah. It would definitely be interesting to look at.
It'd be eye candy for Nick.
Oh, yeah.
Well, we're going to get started with today's topic, the Kasai Rex. I was going to say, Nick, before we get deep into this, can you give a general description of what the creature looks like for those of our listeners that haven't listened to our past shows or don't know what we're talking about?
Well, the Kasai Rex is reportedly a living Tyrannosaurus Rex or Allosaurus or some other bipedal reptile, which is a reddish-brown color. It's probably the shortest and simplest way to describe it. And it's supposed to inhabit the jungles of Africa. And it's supposed to... The Congo, you know. The Congo's in Africa. I'm just using a general description. Congo's its own continent. Okay, it's in the jungles of the Congo, and it was sighted about 80 years ago, and we'll get into that story in a second. But yeah, it's just a living dinosaur amongst a collection of living dinosaurs that are supposed to still be alive and roam the earth to this day.
Well, the Kasai Rex, it's one of the most controversial but yet interesting living dinosaurs that are reported around the world. Well, there's a couple famous reports. I guess I'll get started with the most famous first. It says, in 1932, John Johnson, sometimes spelled Johansson, he's a Swedish plantation owner, was traveling with a servant in the Kasai Valley of the Belgian Congo, now the Democratic Republic of the Congo. They encountered a rhinoceros, and while attempting to pass it without detection, they were surprised by a large creature rushing out of the undergrowth and attacking this rhinoceros. The servant ran away and Johnson fainted. He awoke to see the creature was eating the rhinoceros. He said, this was in his own words, it was reddish in color with black-colored stripes. It had a long snout and numerous teeth. He decided the creature was about 43 foot long and looked like a Tyrannosaurus Rex. He also said the legs were thick and it reminded him of a lion, built for speed. Now, you're thinking, you're reading this report, or you're hearing this report. Before we get started with the controversial topics about the report, let's say, Nick,
yeah,
would this thing be able to feed on a rhino, you think? The rhino wouldn't put up some kind of a fight, right? It wouldn't let it attack it like that.
Oh, yeah, a rhinoceros or any large herbivore could put up a fight against the predator. But the predator obviously could put up a fight as well. So it comes down to, as Charles Darwin himself said, a world of talons, teeth, and claws. So, it's whoever just outfights the other one is going to live. The other's gonna die. I guess I'm stating the very obvious thing.
Well, he doesn't really mention a struggle, is what I was meant to say. He didn't really mention a struggle, is what I was going to say.
Oh.
Anyways, yeah, another interesting note. They said in the Belgian Congo at that time, that was a very remote area for 1932 to be out in the bush in Africa.
Yeah.
I mean, it didn't really say what he was hunting in particular, but I'm assuming it would be some kind of a large game animal of some sort.
Oh, yeah. I'm not familiar with the type of game animals in the jungles of the Congo, so I can't really say much in regards to what he was hunting, but hunting trips to Africa have been popular for, I think, since like the 1800s, maybe even the 1700s. So it's not too unusual to see someone going out to hunt something out there.
Well, some of the more controversial things with this story, it says that he fainted. I guess it would scare you pretty bad to see that, but it says he conveniently fainted after seeing this creature, and the servant ran away. I don't know why they didn't get the servant's point of view from what he's seen. What do you think, Brent?
About what? The servant's point? That they should have got the servant's point of view?
About him fainting and the servant running away.
About what?
The plantation owner fainted and his servant ran away.
Oh. I probably would have done the same thing.
But if he's a hunter, you think he might have shot at it or something, unless he was kind of
if I saw something like that, I wouldn't even try to shoot at it. Probably just piss it off.
Well, a similar story appeared in the 1932 edition of the Rhodesia Herald, with slight differences. The names were changed from Johansson to Johnson, and the creature eats the rhino, and the servant still flees. Criticism surrounds the story, claiming that it's from one single source, so that's the same story. It said there were 2 photographs that are said to exist, each showing a radical difference from one from the other. One shows a creature resembling a monitor lizard, and in this photograph, a white line surrounds the creature. It appears to be a cutout from a nature magazine, is what some people say. The other photograph depicts a Tyrannosaurus-like creature eating a rhinoceros. I say, Nick, you've seen the pictures, haven't you?
Yeah.
What's your opinion on the pictures?
I think both of them are fakes, in my opinion. I'll just go out there and state my opinion, but I think they're both fakes. I mean, in both accounts of the story of the Kasai encounter, we don't hear of any pictures being taken of the creature, and just by looking at the pictures, I'm not an expert in photography. This would be more up Tim's alley. This is more of his question, so I might throw it to him in a second because he knows a lot more about photography than I do. But just my nice layman's opinion about the photographs, you look at them and they look like something from one of those cheesy caveman dinosaur movies from the 40s or 50s. If you listeners out there can picture that in your mind. One of those cheesy or one of those Greek mythology movies where you get the little clay monsters and they got all these weird movements and whatnot. It looks like one of those pictures. Hey, Tim.
What's that?
What's your opinion, given your experience and knowledge of photography, on the two photos of the Kasai Rex, or potential photos?
Well, to be honest, I know I've seen them before, but I can't remember what they are. So I can't really give like a clear answer right now. I gotta review the pictures one more time.
Okay.
So I know all about the creature and stuff, but I forgot about the photos until we just mentioned them.
Well, in their defense, though, Nick, you have to admit, if they didn't take any photos, I guess, like Brent said, I might have done what the servant did and ran away if I seen them. Well, one researcher said this is their opinion on the pictures. One researcher on an internet website says the picture looks like a still from a King Kong movie.
Yeah.
But since we're pretty sure the giant ape film was a documentary, it really doesn't diminish from the picture's authenticity, he says. He says it might be from King Kong, is the one guy was saying. Well, I have some more questions. They're kind of all over the place. Okay, here's in the creature's defense. It's sighted in the Congo and remote rainforest regions of Africa, primarily the Kasai Valleys, where these reports come from. Of course, that's how it got its name. But Nick, don't you think the Congo would be a perfect habitat for a creature such as that?
Well, I guess I'll field the question. The environment definitely would be ideal for such an animal to live. It's out in the middle of literally nowhere, and as I was talking about the lake monster at the beginning of the show, this environment is pretty stable. Some people out on the internet have said that the Congo and the heartland of Africa has changed drastically or dramatically since the days of the dinosaurs. And I would say that it probably has changed a great deal, but at the same time, the environment is still very warm. It's right along the equator. It's very warm. It's wet. There's a lot of vegetation. There's a lot of animals that live there. It's a hotbed for something like the Kasai Rex to live in. It's got everything a living organism would need: food, shelter, water. If there's other members of the species, which I would assume there would be a way to reproduce, to continue the furtherance of the species. So this environment, again, I don't want to beat this over the head over and over again, but the environment is definitely the right place to find something like the Kasai Rex, if there is such a thing.
Well, yeah, I'd like to add on to what Nick said. Well, you figure it's in a rainforest, a tropical, not tropical, but it's a rainforest where it's a very remote rainforest. Almost no one lives there. And like Nick was saying, it has changed a great deal, but I would say if there was going to be a good habitat, that would probably be it.
Yeah, I agree.
We also have to remember there's other living dinosaurs that are reported in the same exact area that are studied more closely. We also have to imagine there's the Mokele Mbembe, which is, it's almost like a brontosaurus-like dinosaur. That's one of the most famous cryptids in cryptozoology. We also have to say, well, there's the ethylene blue is how you say it. It's almost like a Triceratops. There's like 3 or 4 different dinosaurs that are sighted in that area. And, of course, the Kongomodo, the flying, almost like a pterosaur type animal.
Yeah.
I don't know. Well, Brent, I was going to say, you don't think it's just a coincidence that all these dinosaurs are sighted there, do you? Brent?
Just the way it is. I don't think there really is a real coincidence towards it. I mean, of course there is. I mean, there's all these dinosaurs all congregated around the same general area that people are seeing, like Mokele Mbembe, Kasai Rex, and all those other ones. So, I mean, there could be a possibility that there is a still prehistoric environment just buried deep inside the Congo that no one's ever been or seen.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly, almost like a sanctuary hidden in time almost, yeah.
Yeah, there you go. Well, I was going to say, Nick, think about it. The most living dinosaurs are spotted in Papua New Guinea, Indonesia, and the rainforest regions of Africa. I'd say, Nick, you know some stuff about the forest near New Guinea. Since I know you wrote like that paper for your college professor on it. What are some of the similarities, Nick, in the forest? I mean, I know we were talking about this reading your paper the other day.
Yeah. Well, again, like I said, both forests and well, to give an idea, I guess I should start with the geographic location of these places. The geographic location of the rainforests all across the globe, again, lie close, if not right on the equator. So the rainforests of New Guinea and the rainforests in the Congo, even though they're thousands of miles apart, have roughly the same latitude. So that puts them in a position to receive roughly the same amount of sunlight, and that gives them the similar type of climate which both of them have. They're both tropical rainforests. So that just to begin with, they have not the same geographic location, but their location in relation to the sun is what's the most important thing. The reason why the rainforest is the way it is versus the North Pole is because of the North Pole's relation to the sun versus the rainforest relation to the sun. So that allows all these plants and animals to thrive there in the rainforest. So that being said, that is the most important thing. And then they receive relatively the same amounts of rainfall, which is a great deal. So when you combine a lot of water with a lot of sun, you're going to get, a Garden of Eden type environment, I guess, to draw a biblical allegory to it. A Garden of Eden environment where there's just plants and trees growing like, wildfire. And lastly, I'd like to say this. Both environments have been impacted very little by human beings. I mean, in the history of the world, the number one destructive force, I don't know if I could say number one, I'm just kind of using number one maybe a little rhetorically. I don't have the official statistics in front of me, but as one of the biggest causes of environmental destruction in the world's history has been mankind. I mean, I'm not I'm not a tree hugger. I'm going to put that right now. I'm not a tree hugger or someone who has the loopy thoughts of a tree hugger, but I do recognize things that are facts, and the fact is people have been destroying environments for hundreds and thousands of years for their own use, and these environments where the Mokele Mbembe, the Kasai Rex, the Ropen out in New Guinea, in these environments where these creatures are spotted, there are very little amounts of human activity going on over there, so the environment is relatively untouched. So those, I think, are the three biggest similarities between the various different types of rainforest environments that we're talking about today.
Well, we're getting a couple questions in our chat room about researching this creature. Why aren't there very many researchers working on this case? What do you think, Tim?
Sorry, my phone was cutting out. What do I think about what, Jer?
Why don't you think there's very many researchers working on the Kasai Rex or the living dinosaurs?
Well, just the fact, I think, number one, a lot of scientists they don't like to go out into the field, first of all, and investigate the way a lot of people, a lot of people do. So you have a select few that do, but then another reason is just the like Nick was saying, the geographic location. They're so hard to get there, and a lot of these places are sadly located in places of tribal warfare and such other places like that, so, and civil war.
Well, I'd assume the cost would be expensive, too.
Yeah, so there's just many different reasons, but yeah, and then it could also be because of money and poor funding, people don't believe, all sorts of other different reasons.
Yeah, there's a large amount of reasons as to why people aren't going to go looking for these types of things.
So, well, Brent, you wouldn't want a chance getting your head chopped off to go look for it, Brent?
Not really.
Well, this might be a shocker, but I guess in probably two or 3 years from now, we were thinking of planning on going to Cameroon to try to go look for the Mokele Mbembe or Kasai Rex. Or, of course, there's our trip to New Guinea, too. One of the two.
Oh,
We'll figure it out. What do you think, Fran? Which one would you rather go to?
Either or, it doesn't matter to me.
They're practically the same. They're both in the center of warfare at the moment.
Yeah.
Brent's got to go buy an AK or something to go down there. Anyways.
No, you got to buy it when you get there, though. Remember?
Oh yeah, because you can't take it on the plane. You got to buy a weapon that was used several times. One of the questions that's in the chat room, it says, there was apparently a Kasai Rex footprint that was casted in the 1940s or 1950s, they're saying. Do any of you guys know about that?
I think I heard of it for like I think it's something you and I discussed actually in a random discussion one day very quickly, but besides that, I'm not really familiar with it.
I don't know the authenticity of the cast, but just saying if it's legit. Doesn't that mean that the creature was around at least 20 years after the original sighting?
Yeah.
Between 10 to 20 years.
And
then the other question that they're asking is, could there be more photos out there of the creature or more convincing photos that aren't produced to the public or in the newspapers?
Well, there could be, because I know there's a lot of people take video. For example, some people will take videos of just like the forest, and then later on they'll watch it years later and they'll find out, oh, I may have a glimpse of a Sasquatch in the background or something. So
yeah.
There could be somewhere out there.
Well, I know that because that one time, I remember we were out hiking with Brent or whatever, and he took a picture. We had that like a weird, strange footprint in the ground. I remember that.
Oh yeah.
Remember that, Brent, when we almost got that weird Bigfoot-looking footprint that one time?
Oh, yeah, but it was so deteriorated that we couldn't really do anything about it.
Yeah. Well, here's a good question. In the chat room, there's a guy named Gary C. He says, would this animal be nocturnal? I never thought of this question before. It should be interesting. What do you think, Brent? Could that be why nobody sees it, because it's nocturnal?
It's a possibility that it could be nocturnal. I mean, not a lot of people, not a lot of the natives, I would say, would recommend traveling at night in a big, dangerous rainforest, because not most predators, but I guess in a rainforest there is a lot of predators that do hunt at night. So that could be a reason why.
Well, I know panthers and lions live in the area.
Of course.
They're nocturnal. Well, I guess they're active in the day and at night, but...
Yeah.
So is Brent.
Like you said, it's dangerous. There's like bandits and things that go out there, too.
Yeah.
Well, Nick, here's a question, an interesting question that I was thinking. Since it's a large predator animal, naturally, like science says, wouldn't there be less of them in the natural food cycle? Could that be why there isn't very many of them?
It's definitely possible. There just could be a small population of these creatures which just sustains itself enough for a small population to continue, but not a larger one. Perhaps that's the only size the ecosystem can support. So yeah, it's definitely a possibility.
So what about inbreeding?
Well, that's another possibility, that they could inbreed with each other to preserve the species. There's animals that do that all the time. Another possibility, which here's one that might be a little far out left field, which I cannot prove at all, but is an interesting thing. There are species of lizards, I believe, and there are definitely species of fish, I know, that produce asexually. Animals that can fertilize their own eggs and lay eggs. So if the population is very small, perhaps these animals do not have sexual reproduction. Perhaps they just reproduce asexually, like some other species of reptiles and fish do. I don't know the specific names of the species themselves, but I do know that they do exist.
Well, sponges and starfish do that.
Yeah. I mean, there's just... Well, I knew that. What I'm saying, I think, there's species of lizards that produce without mating. They fertilize their own eggs and lay them. So, or there's species that can change genders over the course of their lifetimes. You see that in species of fish. Sometimes a fish will be born a male and it'll become a female, and then it'll go back to being a male in the course of the lifetime. So
like
that's
Lady
definitely
Gaga?
a possibility. Wow. Yeah, I guess you could say like Lady Gaga.
Just add a little bit on what Nick was saying. From what he was saying about the lizards and how they can reproduce asexually. There's actually I like what he was saying, that if the species population in that general area isn't thriving, they could actually make clones of themselves. They'll reproduce and the egg will be fertilized, but it'll be an exact clone of themselves to try to repopulate the area.
Yeah, I heard that.
Maybe they could be doing the same type of thing out there.
Yeah, that is interesting. I never thought about that. Where's a good question for Brent? Here's a good one. Why haven't they found a body? Is the question that's being asked.
Well, there's a lot of reasons why a body couldn't be found. I mean, there's definitely a lot of vegetation in the rainforest that could cover up a gigantic body of some type of reptile creature as the Kasai Rex. That, I mean, it could be that, and plus the same reason for this decomposing body. I mean, probably the decomposition of the body in a rainforest is probably a little bit more humid, so the body could deteriorate faster after it dies. It could just, because it's like, you know, swampy rainforest, humid area, it could just accelerate the decomposition of the body, thus leaving nothing there for us to find.
Yeah, exactly. The swampy environment and everything like that too.
Brent is the swampy man.
They call me that sometimes.
Well, what was I going to say? Well, I found another sighting report of the Kasai Rex that was from, I think it was from like the 1950s or the 40s. It's on my blog at king-sasquatch-bfpteam.blogspot.com. I have the story on there. There's some kind of a village. I forgot what it was called. I have it written down on there. There's a village where they claim that they killed a Kasai Rex. They speared it and killed this animal. And they said it was covered in reddish-colored fur. I thought that was a little weird. Not scales like you would think, but some type of a fur. And I was thinking, why would that fur be beneficial to it in a rainforest, Nick? What's your opinion?
That's... I wouldn't know why it would be beneficial, but I could say there's a prime example of an animal in nature that possesses attributes, physical attributes, which really don't make sense. The duck-billed platypus. It's an animal that has fur, yet it lays eggs, and it's got a duck bill and like a beaver. I mean, it looks like a freak creation from the lab of a mad scientist. And even to this day, you know, in our day and age, scientists still look at this animal and go, what the heck happened? Here you have a mammal that lays eggs. It's a mammal. It's warm-blooded. Like I said, it's got fur, yet it has the capacity to lay eggs like a chicken or a lizard or something like that. It's just very out there in terms of how it evolved. So perhaps the Kasai Rex or this animal that was found with the reddish fur on a reptile, it's not something it is weird, but it's not something that's unfounded. Like I said, because with the dark-billed platypus, you have an animal that really doesn't make sense in an evolutionary sense. So,
well, the original report doesn't say there's any fur that was present. He doesn't really say. But Brent, here's an interesting question. Do you think that it could be a subspecies, or maybe one of these creatures is more evolved than the other, or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, you see it in, I guess, earlier reptiles back in the day, in the land before time. But they obviously started to evolve into what are now birds. Like some species would, you know, start to grow feathers. It would kind of look like hair, I guess you would say, but some would have a little bit of feathers on them, but they would be so small that they would look like hairs. It would kind of look like a little fuzzy velociraptor running around.
Was that like the oviraptor or something like that had feathers?
Yeah, the oviraptor.
Well, Nick, I was going to say, sorry to cut you off, Brent, but Nick, I know you had some new hypothesis, a new series that were posted on our website. So, Nick, can you talk a little bit about those?
Oh,
and your new evidence that you uncovered.
The new grand hypothesis. Well, here's my thought regarding the Kasai Rex. Well, I think that the Kasai Rex is probably not a dinosaur. I mean, if you want to consider a crocodile a dinosaur, I think the Kasai Rex could definitely fit that definition because crocodiles have been around for 50, 60, 70 million years, and they have changed very little over that time period, which is amazing. I think that the Kasai Rex is a giant lizard. I think it's a larger version of the Komodo dragon. I don't think it's a Komodo dragon per se. I'm just using that as an illustrative thing to give people a visual of what I'm talking about, because it is curious to see that one of the photos of the Kasai Rex is of a reptile on all fours.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm thinking when I hear the story of the Kasai Rex. I'm picturing a lizard, a reptile, running on 4 feet instead of standing on 2.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I think the best evidence for that theory would be just, again, look at the Komodo dragon. And there's a great deal of similarities between the environment of the Komodo dragon and the environment of the Kasai Rex. The islands in which the Komodo dragon, the Galapagos Islands, right, Jared? They're the Komodo dragons of the Galapagos Islands. Okay.
I think it's Komodo Island to be exact.
Komodo Island.
No, okay. Brent knows more about it than I do. He's the Komodo dragon guy.
Well, in the environment on the islands of the Komodo dragon, an island, first off, is just isolated. Period. Never mind the islands that the Komodo dragon is found on. There's very little human activity on those islands. So the island that the Komodo dragon, the islands that they're found on, allowed the Komodo dragon to evolve in the way that it did as a giant lizard. The environment to which the Kasai Rex lives in is almost an island unto itself, not in a literal fashion, meaning it's surrounded by water, but rather it's an island of a jungle just out in the middle of the heart of Africa, which is isolated from civilization and, again, other factors that could disrupt the environment. So here you have two isolated environments, and you have you have one story of the Kasai Rex of a large predatory reptile, and where the Komodo dragon lives, you have a large predatory reptile.
Mm-hmm.
So I could probably go ramble on and on and on and on with this theory, but to kind of cut to the chase, in the Kasai Valley and the surrounding area, I believe there's a situation where a reptile could have grown and grown and grown and grown, perhaps 30, 40 foot long. Because even at first, when the Komodo dragon was first discovered by seafarers, I'm just going to throw an arbitrary date out there, 1700s, maybe earlier, but around 1700s, sailors were coming back with stories of these large, dinosaur, dragon-like creatures. And people were laughing at them back then, saying, there's large dragons out in the middle of, the ocean. You have to be crazy. That's what they were saying back then. So now we've found that there actually are large, not necessarily dragons, but there are large reptiles out on these islands in the Pacific Ocean. So I don't think it's too far of a thing to say, too far of a weird thing to say that the Kasai Rex could be a large reptile similar to the Komodo dragon.
Nick.
Yeah.
I was gonna say. Brent, did you just receive my message I sent you? What's that, Brent?
I said, let me check. Hold on.
I would say, yeah, because that's about your inquiry you were going to ask Nick. I would say, is there any way you could ask him about that?
That's it. I will let you know.
I think he's reading it. But yeah, Nick.
Yeah.
Brent was going to ask you about your new evidence you were talking about. You said that you had a friend that you went to college with who said that he lives somewhat near that village where they got that carcass of that Kasai Rex. I guess you were saying that they were going to try to send a piece of the fur or something, that someone in the village had some, or can you talk briefly about that?
Oh, yeah, well, when I went to school out in Cleveland, there are two random African students that I went to class with, and, you know, I would talk to them from time to time. Pretty cool guys. I talked to them and asked them questions about, about Africa. I was just curious to learn about, what they had gone through and just about their culture in general. I like to do that type of thing. And I did bring up, the stories of living dinosaurs to them. And one of them, his name is Lou. I can't say his full name, but his short version is Louef. And he said that his village that he came from, he's a refugee from the civil wars that go on in the Congo and whatnot. He came over here to the United States to get away from all that stuff and to make a better life for himself. And it's very admirable, but I'm not going to go off on my little tangent about him. But he said that, there in his village that there was a body discovered of a very large reptile that the people in his village were scared of. They didn't even want to go near it because they thought that it was from the gods or something like that, and that it was a curse brought upon them. It was a sign of a curse. It was an omen that, something bad was going to come down upon their village and upon the world. So they went and poked it with sticks bait. I mean, not literally, but they went and they just kind of took a peek at it, and they were frightened off by it. And stories circulated, in his area, in the Congo where he was from, about this animal. And it scared the living Jesus out of all the people that heard it. Because, like I said, in that part of the world, they take signs and omens and things like that very seriously. Like, if, they see a lightning bolt, they think it's a message from God that they're going to be punished for, so I'm just throwing something out there to kind of give the listeners an idea of what I'm talking about. So when they saw this body of this animal, this weird creature, they were very, very scared of it. They thought it was something that had come out of hell, I guess, and in their sense, to translate from their minds to our Western minds, they thought that it had come from hell, and again, that a curse was about to be put on them in their village, and they had to prepare for it. So, that's an eyewitness account I had heard off when I was in college.
Well, I know that you said that he might be able to try to track down a piece of that fur from the animal. Because I know he said he doesn't know yet or whatever. Yeah,
he doesn't know. Last time I talked, it's been about 5 or 6 months since I talked to the guy, so I don't know what's going on with that or with him in general. So, he said he could get a piece of fur or something for us to look at. But, again, I just have to try to get in contact with him again.
Yeah, you should keep us updated. What do you think, Brent?
Yeah, that sounds real interesting.
We have 5 minutes left in the show. I have one last interesting point to make. some people are saying that Tyrannosaurus Rex never lived on the African continent, but there was 2 dinosaur species that are similar to a T-Rex that look at pretty much the same exact animal for the most part. They did find fossils of them that lived in the Congo and Africa, which is interesting. And then the creature is said to travel waterways in the deep jungle. And that sounds like something that would be plausible to me. I don't know about you guys.
Well, I don't know about the Kasai Rex case in particular. In my opinion, the Kasai Rex incident sounds like a fabricated story meant to gain attention, but as to the possibility of other living dinosaurs, I am definitely open-minded to that.
Well, I was just saying, if it was real, that would be something it would do, though.
Oh, yeah.
Well, so Nick, can you make a recap of the show real quick before we end the show for this week?
All right. Well, we opened up the show with a little bit of team news. Then we went on to discussing just some random paranormal news topics of the day. Then we finally dived into our main topic of the Kasai Rex. We talked about how the environment is a good place for this animal to breed. We discussed how the animal might breed. We discussed the 2 or 3 stories that are in circulation about this creature. We talked about the finding of a body and about a classmate of mine who lived in a location where a body was found. So that's basically the show in a nutshell.
Yeah, again, I'd like to thank everyone that can help contribute to the show, including our listeners, my co-hosts, and anybody that sent us questions. I'll let my co-hosts say their goodbyes for this week before we end the show.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks for listening, everybody. Again, tune in next Saturday at 3 p.m. Pacific for an all-new episode of BFP Radio.